Welcome to Voices of Life, a place for stories, thoughts, and lessons inspired by everyday life. Take a moment to listen, reflect, and learn. Welcome.
For 30 years, I believed I knew exactly what my life was. I was the dependable guy, the one who showed up early, stayed late, and never complained. The one who missed birthdays, anniversaries, and school plays because just one more project always needed finishing. I told myself it was worth it. I was building something solid. A future, a retirement, a life my wife and kids would never have to worry about. And on a quiet Tuesday morning in October, I finally reached the finish line. The HR director shook my hand and slid the folder across the table. Inside were the documents I'd worked 3 decades for, my retirement package. The number printed on the page didn't even feel real. I stared at it longer than I should have. $3.2 million. My manager clapped me on the back. There were handshakes. A cake I didn't ask for. A cheap plaque with my name engraved on it. Everyone said the same thing. You earned this. And for the first time in years, I left work early. I didn't text my wife. I wanted to surprise her. I imagined her face when I walked in, how we'd laugh, maybe cry a little. I pictured us talking about trips we never had time for. Italy, Yellowstone, somewhere quiet. I pulled into the driveway just after 3 in the afternoon. The house was quiet when I stepped inside, too quiet. I set my briefcase down near the stairs and was halfway up when I heard her voice. She was upstairs, on the phone. At first, I wasn't really listening. Then I heard my name. And I stopped. She laughed. Not the laugh she used with me, but a lighter one. Almost excited. Don't worry, she said. Once everything's finalized, we'll get at least half. Probably more. My chest tightened. A pause. She continued. He has no idea what's coming. And honestly, he won't fight it. He never does. I stood there, frozen on the staircase we'd taken Christmas photos on for nearly 30 years. The same stairs where I carried her into the house when we first bought it. The same place our kids sat every morning waiting for the school bus. My hands started shaking. She was talking about divorcing me. Not someday. Not hypothetically. This was planned, calculated, timed. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't confront her. I didn't even breathe properly. I picked up my briefcase, walked back out the front door, and sat in my car until the shaking stopped. Then I drove. No destination. Just away. I ended up in a coffee shop a few miles down the road, staring at a cold cup I never touched. My mind replayed our marriage like a highlight reel, except now, every scene felt suspicious. The gym obsession. The new clothes. The phone that suddenly needed a password. The emotional distance I blamed on stress. And then something hit me. She didn't know about the retirement package. The announcement wouldn't go public until the next day. So how could she already be planning around money she shouldn't even know existed? That realization changed everything, because it meant this wasn't a reaction to my retirement. It was already in motion. And someone else knew before she should have. I pulled out my phone and made a call. Not to my wife, not to a lawyer, but to a coworker I trusted more than anyone in IT. Hey, I said, forcing my voice steady. I need to ask you something. Off the record. There was a pause on the other end. And when he answered, I knew, whatever I was about to uncover was going to turn my life upside down. What I learned in the next 10 minutes didn't just explain my wife's betrayal. It exposed a secret network working behind my back, and once I saw it, there was no going back. My coworker didn't answer right away. I could hear typing on his end, the soft clicking of keys that suddenly felt louder than the coffee shop around me. I stared out the window, watching cars pass, wondering how a normal afternoon had turned into the most unsettling day of my life. Finally, he spoke. Okay, he said carefully. I can look. But if this gets traced back to me, I'm denying everything. I understand, I replied. I just need to know the truth. Another pause. Then he exhaled. Your retirement file was accessed yesterday. My stomach dropped. Who? I asked. He hesitated. Someone from HR. The name hit me harder than I expected. Not because I didn't know her, but because I did. She wasn't a stranger. She'd worked at the company for years. Professional. Quiet. The last person I'd ever suspect of crossing a line. There's more, he added. I closed my eyes. Tell me. The file wasn't just opened, he said. It was forwarded. Sent outside the company. I gripped the edge of the table. To who? He read the address out loud. It wasn't personal. It wasn't random. It belonged to a financial consulting firm. I searched it immediately. The website loaded fast. Polished, confident, carefully designed to build trust. The man on the homepage looked like someone who sold certainty. Early 40s, sharp smile, tailored suit. Every photo screamed control. His services listed everything from retirement planning to asset restructuring. And then I saw it. Divorce strategy. My chest tightened. This wasn't just an affair of the heart. This was business. Cold, organized, planned. I leaned back in my chair, letting the realization settle. My wife wasn't just leaving me. She was preparing to take me apart piece by piece, financially, legally, completely. And she had help. When I finally drove home that evening, the sun was already setting. The house looked the same. Peaceful, familiar. Like nothing inside it had changed. She was in the kitchen, humming to herself while cooking dinner. She smiled when she saw me. You're late, she said casually. Long day, I replied. She didn't ask questions. She never did. We ate together, talked about nothing important, watched TV, went to bed like any other night. But I barely slept. My mind kept replaying one thought over and over. She still didn't know that I knew. And that was my only advantage. The next morning, instead of going for my usual walk, I drove to a law office in the next town over. Not someone local, not anyone who might know us. I needed distance, discretion. The woman I met was calm in a way that immediately put me on edge. She listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes, never reacting, even when I told her what I'd overheard. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. I'm going to be honest with you, she said. Your wife is already preparing for war. I swallowed. What do I do? You don't confront her, she said. Not yet. You act normal. You let her believe she's ahead. She explained things clearly. How timing mattered. How money that hadn't officially transferred could still be protected. How information leaks created leverage. Most importantly, she explained something I hadn't considered. Right now, she said, you're not the one in danger. I looked at her, confused. She is, she continued. Because she broke rules. And people who break rules panic when they realize they've been caught. I left her office with a plan. Not for revenge, not for drama, but for protection. At home, my wife was suddenly affectionate, attentive, curious about my future plans. She talked about traveling, downsizing, starting a new chapter together. I nodded, smiled, played along, because while she believed she was setting the trap, I was quietly learning how to step around it. What I uncovered next proved this wasn't just a betrayal. It was a coordinated scheme, and the evidence that surfaced would give me the upper hand, if I stayed patient just a little longer. For the next 2 weeks, I became the best actor of my life. Every morning, I followed the same routine. Coffee at 7, a short walk around the neighborhood, casual conversations about weather, groceries, and television shows neither of us really cared about. From the outside, nothing had changed. But inside, I was documenting everything. Every odd comment, every sudden interest she took in finances she'd ignored for decades. Every late afternoon errand that didn't quite add up. And the strangest part, she was trying harder than she had in years. She cooked my favorite meals, asked about my day, sat closer to me on the couch. At night, she talked about our future, with a warmth that almost convinced me, that I'd imagined the conversation on the phone. Almost. One evening, she poured us both a glass of wine and brought up my retirement. So, she said casually, swirling her glass. Do you know how the company's handling your payout? I shrugged, keeping my voice neutral. Still being finalized. HR stuff. She nodded, but her eyes lingered on me just a second too long. Measuring. Calculating. A few days later, I noticed she'd started taking phone calls in the bathroom with the sink running. Long calls. Whispered calls. And every time she came out, she looked energized. That's when I hired the investigator. He wasn't flashy. No trench coat. No dramatic promises. Just a quiet man with a calm voice and the kind of eyes that missed nothing. I don't need drama, I told him. I need facts. You'll get facts, he said. Within days, the picture became painfully clear. Lunches across town. Meetings labeled as yoga. Hotel lobbies far enough away to feel safe. The same man, over and over again. This wasn't new. It wasn't impulsive. It had been going on for months. And worse, it wasn't just emotional. The man she was seeing wasn't only her affair partner. He was advising her, guiding her, helping her prepare for divorce while smiling across a restaurant table. I stared at the photos spread across my dining table late one night, my hands resting flat against the wood to steady myself. This wasn't rage anymore. It was something colder, something focused. I took everything to my attorney the next morning. She didn't look surprised. This confirms intent, she said. And coordination. What does that mean for me? I asked. It means you stop feeling guilty, she replied. And you stay patient. The retirement funds hadn't transferred yet. That window mattered. Timing was everything. At home, my wife started talking about trips again. Italy came up more than once. She even suggested we downsize the house, someday. I played my part, smiled, agreed, let her believe the future was still wide open. Because while she was imagining her exit, I was preparing mine. The announcement of my retirement finally went public a week later. Colleagues congratulated me online. Messages poured in. My phone buzzed nonstop. That evening, she walked into my home office holding her phone. People are saying you got a big package, she said, trying to sound casual. Is that true? I leaned back in my chair. It's complicated. How complicated? Some upfront money, I said carefully. The rest spread out over time. Pensions, annuities, company stuff. Her smile flickered for half a second. Oh, she said, still, that's amazing. But I could see it. The disappointment, the recalculation. That night, after she thought I was asleep, she took another call. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I thought it'd be more, she whispered. He says it's structured. A pause. I know. But we can't wait forever. I recorded everything. The next morning, my attorney listened quietly, then nodded. Good, she said. Now we move. The transfer date was approaching fast. Once that money landed, everything would change. But until then, I had to keep pretending. One wrong move, one emotional reaction, one slip, and I'd lose the advantage I'd fought so hard to protect. So I stayed calm. I stayed quiet, and I waited. In just 12 days, the money would land, and when it did, I would make a move she never saw coming, one that would flip the entire divorce on its head. The 12 days leading up to the transfer felt longer than the previous 30 years of my career. Every morning, I checked my phone before I even got out of bed. Not because I expected anything new, but because everything depended on timing. One mistake, one leak, one emotional slip, and the plan would collapse. At home, my wife was calmer than I'd ever seen her. Too calm. She stopped asking questions about the retirement money. Stopped pushing. Instead, she became patient, almost serene, like someone confident the outcome was already decided. That worried me more than suspicion ever could. Behind the scenes, my attorney was working fast. Documents, structures, legal firewalls designed specifically for retirement assets. Everything was done quietly, legally, and with precision. This only works if she doesn't know, my attorney reminded me. The moment she suspects, she reacts. So I stayed boring. I talked about grocery lists, about fixing the fence, About nothing at all. Meanwhile, the investigator kept digging. What he uncovered next made my stomach turn. The man my wife was seeing had a pattern. Same playbook, same timeline, same outcome. He didn't just advise women going through divorce, he coached them. Taught them what to say, what to document, when to file, how to frame their husbands as controlling or financially abusive. It wasn't love, it was a business model. And my wife had signed up. When I brought this to my attorney, she didn't raise her voice or curse. She simply nodded once. Good, she said. That makes our case stronger. I laughed bitterly. Funny definition of good. She looked at me sharply. You're still thinking emotionally. Stop. This is chess now. The night before the transfer, my wife cooked dinner and lit candles. She wore a dress I hadn't seen in years. We should celebrate, she said. Your retirement, everything you've accomplished. I raised my glass. To new beginnings. She smiled. And I realized something chilling. She believed this was her victory lap. The next morning, I wasn't home. My attorney had advised me to stay elsewhere, just in case. At 9:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. The funds had landed. $3.2 million. By 10:30 a.m., the money had been moved into a legally protected structure designed specifically for retirement compensation. Locked, shielded, untouchable. At noon, my attorney finalized the next step. At 2 p.m., my wife was served. She wasn't expecting it. The investigator later told me she stood there in the doorway, papers shaking in her hands, rereading the first page like it was written in another language. Divorce. Filed by me, not her. She called her affair partner immediately. Then a lawyer. Then me. I didn't answer. By evening, her attorney had contacted mine, demanding clarification, especially about the retirement money. My attorney returned the call the next morning. Calm, precise, unapologetic. She laid everything out. The affair, the coordination, the leaked information, the recordings, the paper trail, the illegal access of confidential files. Then she made the offer. A settlement, 40% of marital assets. Zero access to the retirement package. No public exposure. No criminal charges pursued. Silence followed. When her attorney finally spoke, his voice was tight. Defensive. Off balance. Need time, he said. You have 48 hours, my attorney replied. When the call ended, I sat back in the chair, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Control. For years, I'd believed keeping the peace meant keeping quiet. That being agreeable was strength. I was wrong. Strength was preparation. Strength was patience. Strength was knowing when to act, and when to wait. 2 days later, the answer came. They accepted. But the agreement wasn't the end of the story, because when we finally came face to face to sign the papers, she said something that made me realize the betrayal went deeper than money, and I had one final decision to make. The last time I saw her as my wife was in a law office conference room that smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink. She arrived early. I arrived late, not by accident. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but emotionally. The confidence she'd worn so easily for months was gone, replaced by something fragile and uncertain. Her eyes avoided mine as we sat across the table, stacks of paperwork neatly arranged between us like a wall. The lawyers went through the terms one last time. 40% of the marital assets. The house to be sold. Accounts divided. No claim on the retirement funds. Confidentiality on both sides. She nodded quietly at every point. No objections. No arguments. When the lawyers finally stepped out to prepare the final documents, silence filled the room. The kind of silence that presses against your chest. She spoke first. I never meant for it to go this far, she said softly. I didn't respond. She folded her hands together, staring at them. I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything. But I am sorry. I studied her face. The same face I'd woken up next to for nearly 3 decades. The face I once trusted more than anyone in the world. Why? I asked. She looked up then, startled. Why what? Why plan it? I said. Why not just leave? Why turn it into a strategy? Her lips trembled. I felt invisible. She said, "You were always working, always tired." And then he listened. He noticed things. He made me feel important. I nodded slowly. And the money? She swallowed. He said I deserved it. That after all those years, I was entitled to more. I leaned back in my chair. So you decided to destroy me to feel seen. Tears welled up in her eyes. I didn't think of it that way. That's the problem, I said quietly. You didn't think of me at all. The lawyers returned with the documents. She signed first, slowly, carefully, like each stroke of the pen carried weight. When it was my turn, my hand didn't shake. It surprised me. As we stood to leave, she hesitated near the door. What happens now? She asked. You move on, I said. So do I. She nodded and walked out without another word. The next few weeks passed in a blur of logistics. The house went on the market. Furniture was divided. Accounts closed. 30 years reduced to boxes and signatures. She moved out first. The house felt empty in a way I hadn't expected. Not lonely, just quiet. Honest. Like the walls could finally breathe. The sale closed quickly. I took my share and bought a smaller place hours away. No neighbors. No memories attached to the walls. Just space. Time. Peace. I started doing things I'd put off for years. Hiking. Woodworking. Volunteering. I reconnected with my kids and told them the truth. Not to turn them against their mother, but to stop carrying secrets that weren't mine to hold. They were hurt, but they understood. Months later, I got a call from an old colleague. The HR employee who leaked my information had been terminated. Investigations followed. Consequences landed where they belonged. The man who thought he was untouchable disappeared from the picture entirely. I didn't feel joy about it. Just balance. Now, most mornings, I sit on my porch with a cup of coffee and watch the sun rise over the mountains. I think about the life I had, the life I lost, and the life I saved. Because the truth is, coming home early that day didn't ruin my future. It protected it. I learned something I wish I'd known sooner. Betrayal doesn't always announce itself with anger or shouting. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it cooks dinner. Sometimes it whispers behind closed doors. And when you uncover it, the smartest thing you can do isn't react. It's prepare. But just when I thought everything was finally behind me, one unexpected call forced me to confront the past one last time, and decide what kind of man I wanted to be moving forward. The call came on a quiet Sunday morning. I almost didn't answer it. The number was unfamiliar, and these days I preferred my silence uninterrupted. But something made me pick up. It was my former coworker, the one who'd quietly warned me months earlier. I thought you should know, he said. It's finally over. He didn't need to explain much. Investigations had wrapped up. Careers had ended. Doors had closed that wouldn't reopen. The people who believed they could bend the rules without consequence had learned otherwise. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the mountains in the distance. I expected to feel relief, vindication, satisfaction, but what I felt instead was clarity. For most of my life, I believed security came from stability, from holding things together at all costs, from avoiding conflict, from sacrificing myself quietly so others could be comfortable. I was wrong. Real security comes from self-respect, from boundaries, from knowing when silence is wisdom, and when it's surrender. I thought about the staircase in our old house, the photos we took there every Christmas, the version of myself who believed loyalty meant endurance, no matter the cost. I don't blame that man anymore. He did the best he could with what he knew. But I'm not him now. These days, my life is smaller, and richer for it. I wake up without dread. I spend my time intentionally. I no longer confuse busyness with purpose. The money matters, of course. It gives freedom, safety, options. But it isn't the victory. The victory is this: I trusted my instincts when it mattered most. I chose patience over panic. I chose strategy over spectacle. And I walked away with my dignity intact. People often ask if I'd do anything differently. I think about that, Maybe I would have listened sooner. To the silence, to the distance, to the small signs I ignored because they didn't fit the story I wanted to believe. But regret has a way of chaining you to the past. I prefer gratitude. Gratitude for the moment I came home early. For the truth I overheard. For the choice I made to pause instead of explode. Because one impulsive confrontation could have cost me everything. Instead, I played the long game. And I won something far more valuable than money. Peace. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. When betrayal reveals itself, don't rush to be loud. Be smart. Gather facts. Protect yourself. And remember, not every battle is meant to be fought with raised voices or slammed doors. Some are won quietly, patiently, with resolve. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's survival. It's rebuilding. It's waking up one day in a life that finally feels honest. As the sun sets each evening, I remind myself of something simple but powerful. I didn't lose 30 years. I gained the rest of my life. And this time, it's mine.
If you've lived through a similar story, if your pain was silenced, ignored, or misunderstood, you're not alone. You can share your story with us directly by email. We read every message, and with your permission, we'll tell your story so others don't feel alone.